Welcome to the Sassy CEO Podcast. I'm Paula Bailey, your host, and in this episode, I am super excited to talk all things woo-woo and business. Now, I'm not going to lie, in the past, I would have been really quite nervous to talk about this, but it's time to have these conversations. So in this episode, I want to go through actually defining what this actually means as opposed to maybe what's out there in society, because I won't lie, I don't love the term, but I think it's really important that we talk about what this all means and how we can apply it in our businesses to actually grow our businesses in a very authentic way. So this is for you if you are into personal development, you're into the woo-woo, for want of a better word, and you've kind of struggled to find the balance between using that to actually influence how you grow your business. If that's a conversation that you want to have, please pull up a pew, put your headphones on, and let's talk about it, because this episode is all about that. Don't forget, if you are interested in, say, mapping out your revenue roadmap for this year and you'd like some help with that, you could always go over to our Sassy CEO gift page. We've got a revenue roadmap there that's free to download. Head over to the sassyceo.com.au/gift and download that for yourself. But without any further ado, let's get started talking all about business and woo. Okay, and here we are talking all about the woo today. And just as I begin this episode, the heavens here in Melbourne are literally opening up and it is torrential rain outside, which is so weird because it has actually been really, really warm here, quite humid, almost like being in Queensland the last few days, and now all of a sudden the heavens are opening up. So opening up as we begin to speak all about the unseen, the woo, and its belonging in business. I think this is a really cool topic. It's something that I wanted to speak to you about for a long time. But before we get started, I think it's also really important to define, like, what do we mean by woo? I don't actually love the term woo. I made a conscientious, a very intentional effort at the beginning of 2019 to use less of the word woo-woo, because I felt like it was diminishing the work and the inner work that I was doing, and the work I was doing for myself, the work I was doing with clients. It kind of made it seem like it was this mythical thing that, you know, woo-woo, it didn't seem to sit with me anymore. But I wanted to use it in this headline for this podcast to talk to you about the woo-woo, because I think a lot of people out there are still using the term woo-woo. It's something that we're familiar with, and language is really important. I want the right people to hear the message. I'm always very deep in trust that when I do these recordings, I sort of sit with what am I going to talk about, and then I put it out and I know that the right people are going to hear. And I feel like using a term like woo-woo is going to, you know, get the right women to kind of or men to pay attention and go, I wouldn't mind tuning in on this conversation about how this all fits in the greater scheme of business. So let's look at a definition. I just go to Urban Dictionary. I wouldn't say it's the best definition, but at the moment, Urban Dictionary has a definition of descriptive of an event or person in espousing new age theories such as energy work, crystal, magic, Reiki, bizarrely restrictive diets, don't know what that's about, or supernatural, paranormal, psychic occurrences, often has studied in an authentic religious tradition such as Hinduism or Zen Buddhism, but now practices an Eastern influence yet severely watered down and westernized pseudo mysticism. So you can see why I really don't like the term, because even in the Urban Dictionary, when we look at how it's being defined, and I can actually click here, there is actually a separate definition. Let's just see what it's bringing up. No, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So I digress. You can see why I kind of feel uncomfortable by using this term, because even in the Urban Dictionary, when you start to look for definitions on this, it's like there's a lot of pseudo, not real, supernatural, and it just kind of takes away from the essence and the importance of this conversation around doing the inner work. So for the purpose of this podcast, I just want to be clear that when I'm speaking about woo-woo, for me, And I appreciate that it's going to be different for everyone. So if it's a little bit different to how you would put it, that's okay. Don't necessarily tune out, but it's all about the inner work. For some people that might be spiritual. It might be energetic. It might just be straight up mindset work for you. Ultimately, it's that unseen work, that creative work, the creative energy, spirituality, soul, however you want to speak about it. For some people, it is a straight up conversation with God, with the universe. I'm actually really not that concerned about the way or the words that you use. It's that essence of the inner work, the unseen, the opposite of, say, pushing, hustling, taking action. It's the opposite of that. So I'm hoping that that makes sense with you and you're with me, whatever you want to call it, whatever that means to you. And obviously, if this is an important concept for you, then you're still going to be listening to this episode. If I've already lost you, it meant that this episode wasn't for you anyway. So that is what I mean by talking about WooWoo, the creative force, the energy, intuition. How does that fit into business is the conversation that I want to have today. And the idea for this episode, as they often do, came to me intuitively, but also in terms of what's going on. And this morning, I was actually due to do a completely different episode and then got in very quick succession some Voxers from my Sassy CEO collective clients, a couple of clients. So Voxer is an app we use as part of that program so that clients can just instantly kind of like walkie-talkie me, have direct access so that if they've got stuff that they need to download or bounce, they can do that and I get back to them when I can. But it's really good for us to be able to just free flow, not waste time trying to write messages or send emails. It's just really great for our efficiency as Sassy CEOs, but also being able to be present and in the moment without always having to feel like we have to bounce a call. So it's really, really great. I love my Voxers and I love being able to free flow in time with these amazing women in business. Now, within the space of 12 hours, 2 Voxers came in and they were very, very similar. And it's all around this concept of staying calm. Like we use a hashtag called Sassy AF in our groups. And it's just this way of being. It's this way, this sassy way of being in our businesses. And a lot of it boils down to how we deal with things not going well. Okay, because everything's grand when everything in business is going swell and we've got lots of clients coming in and lots of sales and revenues up and there doesn't seem to be any issues. But let's face it, that's not the reality of how business is every day. It's not meant to be like that. You got into this, I tell you, you got into this very specifically to learn how to solve the problems, to be able to glide through and be able to grow from the challenges that you're getting. And so we have this concept in our programs. I want to share that with you. And it really does stem from how we are reacting to difficult situations, because we always have choice in how we can respond to challenges. We have choice in everything. And as long as we know that we've got choice, we can always feel empowered. And so both Foxes kind of shared stories with me about difficult moments that had happened in the last 24 hours with these clients. And it was interesting because both gave the recap of how they glided through it, how they asked themselves better questions, how they didn't panic, how once upon a time where that thing or that occurrence would have happened, this particular client or these clients would have completely freaked out and just almost like wanted to shut everything down, hide, run, because it just seemed so overwhelmingly difficult and that there was never going to be a solution. But instead, they chose peace. They chose Zen. They chose connectedness and trust and faith, because one of the questions that I've been asking a lot lately is around the concept of having divine plans. We build strategic plans in the Sassy CEO collective. They're great. They come in every quarter. That's part of action taking. There is a lot of woo in also doing that, but there's a lot of structure there to help with, structure for the business, but help the business owner be able to make great decisions and to really understand what comes next and what they should be working on. But there's another even bigger plan to that, and that is also, a divine plan. And if we accepted that everything that's going on at any time, whether we perceive that to be great or really, really, really horrible and terrible and very inconvenient, what if we just framed everything as part of the plan? And instead of saying, why is this happening to me? We say, why is this happening for me? What am I learning from this? How can I excel? How can I grow from this? And being able to ask better questions like that, being able to, rewire or reframe how you're perceiving the difficult times is what I'm talking about when we're speaking about being sassy AF. And so both gave these stories, and they're marvelous stories because they had the choice. They didn't lose their power in the moment. They had the choice to ask better questions, to think about what am I learning from this situation. And in fact, both stories, really tidied themselves up, so to speak, in reality very, very quickly. For example, one, having a client leave very suddenly, and then instead of freaking out going, well, why is this happening? What can I learn from this? And, how can we replace that revenue quickly and without fuss? And, how can I see something different? And it's so funny because literally within the space of a few hours, someone else emailed to inquire, and the actual amount for what they will be contributing to that business is the exact amounts that person was asking for. And it's all part of the ease and flow. It's all part of the divine plan. But how do we bring more of this into our business? We've been really taught for most of our lives. I think if you've been brought up in the same era as me, I'm pretty sure you have, we got taught to keep pushing. If you're the entrepreneur space, you get messages of hustle harder, push harder, take action, just keep going. Don't ever stop. It's best to just keep hustling and pushing harder. And, what is the balance between this? And that's something that I really like to speak about because it's something we're not talking about with enough frequency for us to really get what does this mean for us. And for each person who's listening to this, by the way, this is going to be very different. I don't like putting anyone into this cookie cutter mold. I don't roll like that. We don't roll like that in our programs. So why would I roll like that in my podcast? I want to, put that caveat in by saying how you perceive this and how you then apply it in your life is going to be very individual. But there are common concepts that we can speak about to help you start to see the light, see the way that this might work for you. And so I often talk about the balance, and I do show my clients a really cool, I guess it's an image or a graph, and I'll put that up now. So if you're watching this podcast via video, you should be able to see that now. But if you are listening to this, never fear, we will put a link to this in the show notes so you can also check it out and have a look to be able to visually see what I'm talking about. And when I talk about this, it's talking about the balance between action energy, and you can see that is there along the horizontal axis, and then there's the creative energy, which is along that vertical axis. So to just clarify again, your creative energy is all that creation, vision, big picture. I mean, I've got celebrating there, but it's the inner work, the woo, the grounding, the spirituality, the connectedness, the soul work, intuition, mindset, inner work, guys. Okay, all of that sort of stuff. I think you get me now. The action energy is all the doing, the performance, the action, the strategy, the testing, the measuring, the numbers, the logic. Okay, and we can really see, well, I can see very quickly because I've been doing it for so long when I am presented with new people to speak to, and I can, quickly gauge very rapidly where that person is sitting along this graph based on how they're feeling, the outcomes they're getting, and the level of stuckness, I guess. And stuckness can come in very different forms. You don't necessarily, you might think that someone who's just really pushing really hard is always stuck, but there's also the opposite ends of the spectrum. And I actually want to really chat about that today so that we can understand, I guess, the symptoms, so that perhaps you can see that yourself, and then understanding, how that might apply for you being able to go into this center zone, which is flow and intuition, which really equals success and happiness. And at the end of the day, I say it all the time, why are you really in business? Yes, you want to leave a legacy. Yes, you want to increase revenue, create more. It might be create more opportunities for your clients, for your team members, for yourself, give your family better opportunities, take great holidays, prove yourself, whatever that is for you. But ultimately, you believe on many levels that all those things, success, are going to give you happiness. We do everything because ultimately we believe that that is the thing that is going to make us happy. So to help us find ourselves in that flow and into that intuitive zone in the middle, the nice balance, and this is the real Libran in me coming out, between action energy and creative energy is where I like to guide people, business owners, to sit. Because there are actually, by the way, studies that show that intuitive CEOs actually run more profitable businesses. So there is a lot of study and data coming out, for those of you who like the data, that show how much effect, being intuitive, connecting in with something other than pushing and logic and all that other stuff can have on the ultimate outcome of your business. So there is a real need now for you to be listening into this conversation. So what about someone who is very typically being taught, push harder, work harder, the harder you work, the more successful you be. They're very low in any sort of creative endeavors. Maybe they're not doing their mindset work. They're not doing any energetic work. They're not connecting in with soul or journaling or whatever that means for you. They're doing none of that. They're just basically pushing. And I see symptoms of that coming out in feeling very burnt out, feeling that no matter what you do, it's never good enough, feeling like it doesn't seem to want to flow. That's the only way you can describe it, like you're constantly pushing stuff uphill and it's just always hard all the time, and that you can only ever really get what you want if you're like kind of spilling blood type of thing. You probably feel exhausted. For a lot of women, it really affects sex drive, so it can really affect your libido. Because words that I haven't used, but you can overlay these over this graph, masculine and feminine energies. I don't like to lead with those words because I think they can have a lot of charge around them and people bring different meaning into masculine and feminine. So I've tended to drop that in the last few years because I don't want you to lose the essence of this work and the concepts that I'm wanting you to understand. But, women that are very, high, they're along the continuum, they're, doing that, what you could classify as masculine energy, pushing, logic, strategy, action, performance. That can be a very common symptom in women, like the low libidos, feeling like there's never enough for the, left over for anything else, exhaustion, and generally just always feeling really hard. On the flip side, there are also those business owners that, love a little bit of woo. They love to do the energetic work. They're deep into, whether it's getting healings or doing their inner work, meditating, journaling, making sure that their chakras are in line. All really great work and great for you to be doing. But when we have business owners that are so far up on that continuum that the level of action is low, they feel ungrounded. They feel like they're sort of almost so frustrated and still very stuck because they're unable to kind of bring the whole vision that they've got into their head to life. Like they can't actually bring it into reality, which is just as frustrating as being on the other end of the spectrum. So at this point of the episode, which one are you? Maybe you flip between the two. I know at times I can find myself flipping very heavily between one or the other, but maybe you are someone who is predominantly one or the other. So I think it's really healthy at this point to kind of take note, like, which one am I sitting at? And whichever one you are on, I've got a couple of questions for you because I want you to gain some insights into yourself over this, because ultimately you're the most important product here in the business. If you don't yet have the business that you want, it's just you haven't expanded to be the woman who believes that she can run that. So that's a lot of inner work there, a little bit of mindset, woo around your beliefs. But you asking yourself the questions that I've got coming up for you can really help to shine some light over what you're doing, how you're showing up every day in your business, like what patterns that you're showing, do they serve you, and how could you start to shine the light on shadows that you've got at the moment and change things around so that you can ultimately change the outcome for you and also maybe change how you feel within your business. So if you are a woman who is really very, very all action, you're an all action type of lady, you love getting in and really thinking about the strategy, about what action you're going to be taking today, the logic, You like to intellectualize everything. You tend to maybe overthink it, but there's a lot of busy work and pushing, and you're always looking for the next strategy. If something's not working, it must be the strategy is off, and you're always looking for maybe the next person's great strategy, the next magic pill that's going to happen on social media, or, the next way to increase revenue. If that's you and you're all an action type of lady, then some questions that I think would be great for you to ask yourself is actually, what is scaring you right now from bringing more creative flow into your world? Why do you sit there? Obviously, it is your comfort area and it feels better to be taking action. It can feel very uncomfortable for someone who's used to just being on the go all the time to stop and sit, because our ego wants to tell us that we don't have time for this, that this is just, not going to get us anywhere, and that unless we keep moving and hustling along, that we're going to fall behind, or whatever fear-based story is coming up for you. But if you actually just took, even if it was just, for the next week, going to take 10 minutes a week, 10 minutes a day would be better, but even 10 minutes a week to just sit down and actually journal or go for a walk outside, quieten your mind and actually tune in to other thoughts and other messages that you might be getting. That's your intuition, okay? And it's like a muscle. You wouldn't go to the gym and just go, oh, I've lifted a weight once and now I should be, the strongest that I'll ever be in my life. You would go and you would practice and you would get better and better and better. And intuitive work is very much like that. And it's different for everyone. How you like to tap into your higher wisdom, your inner self, your creative energy force is very different for everyone, like I said. So for some people it is walking in nature, some people it's meditating, some people it's journaling. I say play with it, but ultimately work out what is it that's stopping you from taking that step to actually just bring a little bit more of that inner work and that silence into your work before you go out and do some more logicking and performance and strategy. How would life be for you if you balance this out a little bit more, and if you balance that incredible drive that you've got with some infinite wisdom of your intuition, remembering that intuitive CEOs are actually more profitable. We've got studies to show this. So what would life be like? What would your business be like if you actually brought some more balance into your world? And then for my ladies out there that are our creative energy, amazing women who love to do their inner work, and they're very up to speed with how they are energetically, and they love their healings, they do all their creative work, they do their journaling, they're meditating, they're connecting with soul, whatever it means for you. Maybe you work with a coach and you do all your mindset stuff. You're very self-aware, but you don't seem to be able to take the action. There's something that still always stops you. Maybe you're always looking for the next gremlin that's stopping you from actually taking that action, taking that leap of faith. How are you using your inner work to protect you from creating your desired outcomes for real, like in this actual reality? Because we can actually use our spiritual work, our inner work, as a protection mechanism, as an excuse to not take action, because we're so fearful of what will the action actually mean, what will happen when I actually start to bring forth and actually make an effort towards what it is that I want. And you'll find that there's things coming up for what you believe about what it is that you're wanting, and fears around what that means for you, perhaps what that means for your family. So this is an opportunity for you to ultimately do a little bit more soul searching around that. But then my advice for you is to actually go and take some action. If you're fearing failure, a really great quote that I read recently was around failure being a loving guidance for you that you're just not quite on the right track. And it's just like, hello, here's a message from the universe to tell you that this is not quite right. Keep going. You've got this. You don't need to stop, because it's, again, our perception on failure and our ability to go, that doesn't mean anything. That just means that I'm not quite on the right track. But thank you so much for that loving reminder. I'm going to go out again and try again. So what is scaring you from now taking the action and really bringing into the physical realm all your ideas, all the things that you've thought about in your imagination? Because I promise you they're going to be so much sweeter when you're actually living that life for real and not just in your journal pages. So the world is changing. We're having these conversations more and more. I think even for me, if I can be really raw and honest, which is how I want to come at you all the time in these podcasts, because I think the more we can actually be real with each other, the more we can connect and really be authentic about where we're at, the better the world is going to be. And, you know, from my perspective, even having this conversation, even 6 months ago, would have terrified me. I've spent many years over the last few years working on myself, working with amazing coaches and practitioners to really help myself unleash, you know, my unique message. And, you know, this is very much a part of what I speak about in business. We don't just teach someone sales strategies. We teach them how to connect, how to align, you know, how to do the inner work so that sales just feels easy and in flow, and it feels amazing. It doesn't feel like it's icky or pushy or, you know, not the way that you want it to be, because you can create this the exact way that you want it to be with a little bit of creative flair from the universe, hey, because we don't know everything. So I think there's always room for letting the divine plan flow, but you ultimately have the power over how you want this to roll. It's your movie. We are having a world that's changing, and I, for one, want more conversations about the woo-woo, more conversations about intuition, inner work, the unseen, whether that's spiritual or soul or mindset work. I want more of this to be, you know, openly spoken about in business circles. We speak about it openly in our groups, you know, but it's time for us to, you know, bring this out and actually speak about it out in the open, not just behind closed doors. I know for me as a business leader, really feeling that this year, and not just going, I'm only going to keep these woo-woo conversations for, you know, our Sassy CEO collective masterminds. I think it's really important that we're talking about this in the open, out as a whole, and owning who we are, owning what we believe, owning what we feel is sacred to us, and then really fusing that with the action and the drive that we have already for our businesses and for the legacies that we want to leave behind. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. We're always really open to hear your feedback. You know, please feel free to email us. That you can find all our contact details on the website. Come along and join us in the Sassy CEO Society. That's the Sassy CEO free Facebook group that is for high vibe women. We're always honing that and creating new education to help you increase your revenue, create solid foundations in your sales process so that you can increase revenue and then ultimately scale from there. We love creating great structure for you, but also bringing in some of this magical creative flow so that you really build a business that is in balance with what you want, which I think is what more humans, not just women, but humans are craving now. The world is changing. It's time to have these conversations. It's time to bring the woo into business and fuse it with that exceptional drive that we all already have for what we want to achieve in this world. We want to leave it a better place. I know I, for one, I'm stepping up to do that. I hope you do too. Ask yourself the hard questions. Don't be afraid, and revel in the magic of the answers that come to you. That's all for me for now. I'll leave you on that note. Can't wait to catch you next week. If you feel like this episode is helpful and you've got other amazing business owner friends that you think that this would be helpful for them, please feel free to share the episode. We'd love you forever and a day for sharing the word that is the Sassy CEO. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you soon.